Hello, everybody. My name is Joshua Ahmed. I'm the founder of RealEngineers, and what RealEngineers is effectively Google Translate between hardware engineers and recruiters. And this all started in my time at Lockheed Martin. My job was to put all these complex avionics together, and to do that, I had to build a team of software engineers and RF engineers and electricals. And during that time, I found out when it came to my software engineers, there's so many ways to vet them before the interview. There's, lead code tests, there's all sorts of tests, and ultimately their GitHub, I can go see their code. When it came to my hardware engineers and everybody else, there was nothing equivalent to do that. Which is a big deal because if you just look at college degrees given in the engineering school, 2/3 of all engineers are actually represented somewhere in the hardware umbrella, mechanical, electricals, and those, and the rest are actually software engineers. So this is a huge lot of people who have never felt something like a lead code to demonstrate their skills. And you would think AI is making a lot of things better, but this is one of those places that is actually not. So there's a lot of ways it's making it worse, but two of my favorite is that it's turning into a spy versus spy game, whereas one AI trying to convince the other one that it's a real human and they're a good fit for the job, and then the AI is trying to figure out that you're an AI. And fundamentally, what I realized is that the more candidates optimize their resumes through AI, the more like each other they look. So it becomes like a resume convergence where people look just like each other because AIs are just optimizing for the job. And a good example of this is something that happened in real life even before AI was a thing to me at Lockheed Martin. So I wrote this job description, gave it to my internal tech recruiting team, and I said, hey, this is a job for the F-35 Joint Fighter. So at the LinkedIn title level, he seemed like a perfect fit, had a PhD in aerospace engineering. He applied for the job. One of the keywords we used was waveforms. He used the word waveform as well, seemed like a perfect fit as well. Then we got to the interview and we realized he meant waveform in the aerodynamic sense and we meant waveform in the electromagnetic sense. It's actually not a fit at all. And we were like, how did you make it this far? And so fundamentally, one of the problems is like, okay, the data's missing, but also there needs to be people who need to understand that data, especially early on in the hiring process. So what the problem really is that recruiters are not engineers. Almost every other thing that comes away from that is a pain point from that fundamental problem, is that recruiters aren't engineers. So all the burden is on the engineers to explain themselves, quote unquote, perfectly, so recruiters can understand it, and when they don't, they rely on surface level information to make sense of it, just like job titles and things like that. So how do we solve this problem? Well, we let both sides speak the language that they're good at. How do engineers normally speak? Through their actual work, right? If you're a mechanical engineer, it's your CAD drawing, it's your circuit diagrams, whatever it is. So there's no extra thing you need to learn to make a real engineer's profile. It's your work that speaks for itself. Second, we explain that to the recruiter in simple terms so they don't have to be experts. Our goal is that a recruiter who's never hired a mechanical engineer before on day one can use this tool, can feel like they've been hiring mechanical engineers for 5 years because they would know all the nuances that it takes to learn all that information. This is my favorite slide because it's a practical example of what happened with one of our first recruiters using this tool and one of our first engineers using this tool. The job asked for proficiency in single board computers, and the recruiter was looking at the resume and they didn't even notice when the engineer said, I'm proficient with Raspberry Pis. And I asked the recruiter, I was like, hey, it's right there. It's like, why is he talking about Raspberries or Pis? I'm not sure what's going on. So we pumped him to RealEngineers and he uploaded his actual Raspberry Pi circuit diagram that he connected to the robot. And RealEngineers came out with one sentence for the recruiter and said, Raspberry Pi is a brand of single board computers, so it actually applies to the job perfectly. And the recruiter just looked and said, how many people have I knocked out with this little nuance of information that I never even knew to even look at? I didn't even know what question to ask. And how many people did I knock out because of that? So yeah, so fundamentally that's it. The engineers just talk the way they want to talk, and recruiters get